Welcome to the show. It's IB Nation Sports Talk. He's Vince D'Addario doing the first of two shows here tonight on the old IB platform. He'll be coming up with Brian Driscoll doing Upon Further Review for you live viewers at 8 o'clock tonight. If you're listening on the podcast, well, you just download the other episode and away you go. I mean, that's pretty much the way it is. But having a good Labor Day?
I mean, about as good as you can get. I mean, what's not fun about hanging around outside in 90-degree weather?
Did you eat any blueberries today or any blueberry products?
I did not, because they were out of the blueberry ice cream, my go-to. I mean,
we used to get the blueberry donuts.
They were out of those too.
That's just brutal.
It is.
For those who don't know what we're talking about, Plymouth, Indiana, about 20 miles or so south of us here on Highway 31, every Labor Day weekend, it is the Blueberry Festival down in Plymouth.
Yes.
It has been years. We used to go quite often, and we just haven't gone in a long time, like since the kids got old. And it's really, I don't know if it's, you just you decide you don't want to deal with people when you have your last holiday weekend and all that kind of stuff. But
I go kicking and screaming. My wife loves the fair stuff, and it's a fair of
big
sorts.
Fair.
With
a blueberry theme, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's more crafty booths and stuff of that nature. But there are all the fair rides and the games and the thises and the that's and whatever. And this weekend is pretty busy with college football and high school football. So Friday was out, Saturday was out, Sunday was out because I had to mow the lawn and do all that stuff. So Monday was the only day, and woke up this morning. I was like, do you really want to go? Really? And she's like, yeah. So we went, and they're still there. Actually.
We were sitting there on the couch last night after I had grilled, some meat and all that kind of good stuff. And I was like, oh, we could have gone to the Blueberry Fest today. Yeah, I'm wiped. I'm glad we didn't. So, well, that's enough about blueberries. We've got plenty of Notre Dame stuff we're going to get to, and this could be rail against the machine day, because we're going to get into this whole targeting thing, and you'll hear some of Marcus Freeman's comments from his press conference today about the targeting call and non-call, and then we'll just give our own opinion about it, of course. And then we've got some other Marcus Freeman comments, Steve Angeli, his time playing quarterback, the timeout usage at the end of the first half, which grumpy old man, it's you, he was grumpy about how Marcus Freeman was using the timeouts. We'll talk about that.
I forgot that they had a really good quarterback, I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
My bad.
Yep. Matt Salerno, though, kind of the biggest news. He's going to be out for several weeks, according to Marcus Freeman, with a leg injury. So very unfortunate for him. I don't remember seeing him a play where he got hurt, but Rico Flores, freshman, is going to be elevated in the meantime to Matt Salerno's spot on the depth chart. So it's a big opportunity for Rico Flores. For Matt Salerno, a tough break, I guess, out for several weeks, according to Marcus Freeman.
Yeah, I mean, it is tough, because as much as Matt Salerno has caught the ire of Irish Nation, his role this year, it was perfect. I mean, he was the second string punt returner, but he had some pretty good returns on Saturday that I thought he did a good job there. And then, he rotates in at receiver. And he's a very reliable receiver, and there's nothing wrong with that. You run into issues if he's in your starting group, if he's one of your frontline guys, if he's one of your rotation guys, sixth, seventh guy, that's perfect. That's exactly where you want him to be, and that's where he was. And now, and you never want to see a kid get injured, obviously, but it does hurt the depth of the team. I mean, I don't think there's any two ways about that. And so that part is disappointing, obviously. And so hope for a speedy recovery, get him back in the lineup, things like that nature.
Right. We have a question here. Where did it go? Ron said Braylon James was not in the game. Any reason? And I'm pulling up
the participation chart.
Participation chart. He was, in fact, in the game. So
that's what I thought.
Yeah, maybe you blinked and you missed it, but according to the participation chart, and I can't remember exactly when it was, but I thought I remembered seeing him at some point as well. So he was in the game. So
there you go.
yeah,
And there was a lot of numbers going in and out, towards the end there, especially the
yeah.
last couple of drives, both offensively and defensively. A lot of walk-ons were able to get in the game. I mean, they pretty much emptied the bench for all intents and purposes at that point. So, which was great to see. They even got some guys in on special teams and things of that nature as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this was an opportunity to just let everybody play a little bit inside.
Tons of guys. That's right. 79 by my count on the participation chart. 70, because I mean they got a lot of walk-ons in. Justin Fisher, guy from Mishawaka, and obviously Chase Ketterer on the receiving end of a pass there toward the end. So they got a lot of guys in the game. I mean, not just scholarship guys, but walk-ons as well, which I think is pretty cool that they're able to get some of those guys in there when they had the opportunity.
When it's not a blue gold game. You know what I mean? Like this was an actual game and they're actually going to go down on the participation chart, which is awesome.
Yeah. It's 2 games against 2 teams Notre Dame was supposed to beat, but it was also 98-6 is the combined score against Navy and Tennessee State. I mean, it's kind of the definition of taking care of business. I realized there were some people who were going off the deep end there early on that first Tennessee State possession. Like looking back, I've seen some comments online, like people are flipping out about the defense. And it's like, it took Navy until the end of the game to kick their field goal and Tennessee State's going to score on the first possession. What's going on with this defense? And I did ask Marcus Freeman after the game, hey, you gave up 55 yards on that first drive, but 101 yards the rest of the way. And he touched, he answered it then, and he touched on it again at the beginning of his press conference today. Yeah, it's an FCS school and it's Tennessee State and all that, but it was also their season opener. They, like Navy, threw some things at them that they didn't show on film from a year ago. And there was a little bit of an adjustment period. Could the tackling have been better across the board? Sure. But I felt like as the game went on, that it did get better. Now, that's not to say there weren't ever any missed tackles or anything like that, but I feel like overall got better over the course of the game. What'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, there was some rust to shake off at the beginning of the game, both offensively and defensively. I don't think anybody is going to say that there wasn't, right? I mean, and regardless of who the opponent was, adjusting back from the Navy game in Dublin, I mean, look, there is some legitimacy to that, no matter who you're playing. And we saw some open field missed tackles. Some of the defensive issues, I think, were scheme related, to be honest with you. At first, I didn't really like the scheme that they were playing. We'll talk more about that in upon further review here in a little less than a couple hours. But I'm not overly surprised. Look, they allowed a field goal, guys. Yes, it was their first possession. I get it. And I think the non-call of the targeting, which we're going to talk about, kind of woke them up a little bit. It definitely woke up the crowd, which I think
I agree with that. That was
the defense.
Like, in going back especially and watching it after that, you could really there was a different energy in the stadium and a different energy the defense had after that. After the non-call on the hit on Devyn Ford.
There's no doubt about it. And
shall we call it the BS call?
Yeah, they needed it. They needed something to wake them up, and that did it. I think. I mean, there's only so much you can do as a coach to wake up your team, and I think that lack of a call there, the non-call, I think that woke everybody up, and then they started, playing to their potential defensively. Look, at the end of the day, Tennessee State had very minimal yards. I mean, what did they have total? They had 156 total yards, 67 pass yards, 89 rush yards. I mean, Notre Dame did what they were supposed to do. And if they left the starters in the entire game, they'd have scored way more points than they did, right?
They would have scored 100 points if they had left the starters
easily.
Yeah.
And so
they wouldn't have given up another point.
Exactly.
That's something to be the fact that there were so many reserves in the second half, and Tennessee State still only scored 3 points.
Right.
And again, the yardage, 55 yards on the first drive, 101 the rest of the way, was so many reserves and even walk-ons in the game. Like, think about it that way. The fact that they still gave up virtually nothing in the second half after the game had long been decided and there were a bunch of reserves on the field.
Well, and it's funny because, you know how we've had the conversation that the Notre Dame walk-ons are kind of a different breed than the walk-ons at Notre Dame in the past. Like, there's multiple walk-ons who had offers that were way higher than Tennessee State, right? I believe Justin Fisher had a service academy offer. We know that two of the incoming freshmen had, FBS offers coming in, and they decided to walk on at Notre Dame. So even the walk-ons should beat Tennessee State. I mean, that's the bottom line here. And I think that's what people forgot going into this game. I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he's like, what do you think about this game? I'm like, look, Notre Dame should win by about 50. I mean, realistically, that's what should happen, right? And that's with backups in. He's like, well, we were supposed to do that to like Marshall or Stanford. I'm like, okay, those are Division I programs. I said, this is an FCS program that isn't even a very good FCS program, at least as of last year. So are they on the rise? Are they maybe? I don't know. I don't follow Eddie George's program that closely. This is a very average, if not below average, FCS program that Marshall and Navy and Stanford would murder. So you're not comparing apples to apples. It's apples to oranges here. And at the end of the day, yes, Notre Dame struggled in the first quarter. Then they scored 28 points in the second quarter, okay? And they gave up 0. So let's put it into perspective, right? Notre Dame did what they were supposed to do. Can you nitpick it? Of course you can. That's the coach's job. You don't want number one, there's no such thing as a perfect game. And now you go back and you put on the film and you coach it up. That's what you do.
Let's just talk about these targeting calls.
Okay.
Bill Walsh is nailing it here in the chat, and I'll get to his comments here in a minute. But so you had the Devyn Ford hit. No flag for targeting on the initial call. They don't even review it. And then, of course, you have later in the half the Antonio Carter hit, which looked a lot more incidental to me. Hit him on the shoulder first, but apparently, crown of the helmet, yada, yada. So it was flagged for targeting on a quarterback. Here's Marcus Freeman's comments to that today. He was asked if he thought that the Carter hit was targeting first, and he'll cover both of those plays here in this response.
It was.
Okay.
He hit with the crown of his head. He's got to keep his head up and not launch. And so I tell our coaches the same thing as I tell our players. Like, we can complain about it and disagree, but we have to, within the rules of the game, make sure that we're not getting thrown out of the game. So you're coaching by saying don't launch, keep your head up. And the one on Devyn Ford, the explanation I got was it was with the forehead and not the crown of the head. And so those type of plays are, I'm sure they're really hard to call as a referee. But we have to coach, hey, where's the strike zone? Don't launch, and make sure you're not hitting with the crown of your head.
Had Freddie Fastfingers sitting next to me there, as you could hear with the
Seriously.
typewriter going
Good
there.
Lord, I thought that was you.
It was not me. It was not me. And I have toned down my typing, by the way, since I busted the key on my last computer, busted the keyboard on my last computer. So I've toned it down. I don't need to buy another computer here.
So you're saying the guy that was complaining about your loud typing was accurate? Originally.
No comment. No comment. So Bill Walsh said, okay, that's the second comment. Bill Walsh says, per the rules, leading with the crown is targeting, even if the initial contact is not to the head or neck of the opponent. Rule needs to be adjusted somehow. That is correct. Also, it can be targeting if you lead with the helmet and directly hit the opponent's head or neck. Crown not needed. The Tennessee State player should have been called for it. And that is my beef. Yeah. That is like the explanation Marcus Freeman was given is nonsense, because if it is a helmet-to-helmet hit, it does not matter if it is the crown of the helmet. Here is the rule per the NCAA rulebook: leading with the helmet, shoulder, forearm, fist, hand, or elbow to attack with forcible contact at the head or neck area is indeed targeting. If it is helmet to helmet, it does not have to be with the crown of the helmet. And replay clearly showed the hit to Devyn Ford was with the the forehead area, but it was directly on his helmet. It was helmet to helmet. The definition of targeting, and it was not even reviewed, Vince. And that's like when you see the Notre Dame scoreboard crew, they put those replays up there to say, hey, Mr. Official, look at this in Jumbotron, 6-story high scoreboard. Here it is in high def for you to look at and go, hey, maybe we should look at this. They didn't even review it. That's what bugs me, Vince, is they didn't even review it. And then, not that it's the NBC TV crew's fault, but they come back from replay because they go to commercial break because Devyn Ford is laid out on the field. Marcus Freeman said today he had a concussion. He didn't come back in the game, so he's got a concussion. They're tending to him. While they're doing that, they're showing this up on the big screen. And NBC comes back and barely mentions it. They're like,
mention it. Yeah.
Well, there's the fans are a little upset, and that was it. And then it's like, well, do you guys have a rules analyst? And we found out later Reggie Smith, because they talked to Reggie Smith during the Antonio Carter thing about, and he actually said that he didn't think that it should have been targeting in that case, but they didn't even ask him. Like, if you've got a rules analyst and you've got this replay that shows clear helmet to helmet, and you don't bring in your rules analyst to say, what do you think about this? What are you even doing? Why are you there? Why do you have a rules analyst if you're not even going to? And again, it's not NBC's fault that they didn't send this to replay, but the whole thing is just nonsense, Vince. And it's as I said, I tweeted it at the time. This is why when you look at these two calls and the subjective nature of whether or not they're even going to send it to the replay booth to determine if it should be targeting, ejection should not be part of this if that's how you're going to legislate this.
There are so many things to talk about with this.
I know I went on for a while.
No. I'm just trying to pick out what I want to talk about because there's a million different ways they could have gone. If they would have reviewed it, at least reviewed it. Right. And taking a look, because they had plenty of time because Devyn Ford was practically unconscious on the field. Like, they had plenty of time. It's being shown multiple times on the board, right? The fans are going crazy. You could have at least reviewed it and gone through the motions, right? Because then later on, when the Carter review came up, and they instantly decide that they're going to review. I mean, instantly. And we're all like, really? Like, we're going to take the time to review this? Like, it's not even, what are we talking about here? And we're like, there's no way that that's going to be targeted. There's no way. And then they come back and like, he's ejected from the game. We're like, what do we, like, within one game, it is a perfect analogy of why this rule is not officiated properly. There's no consistency to it whatsoever. And we've complained about this for years, all the way back to the Texas game. Right? We've complained about the inconsistency of the targeting rule forever, and yet no updates, no changes. That's what I have the biggest problem with. In one game, you had one that was the blatant target, in my opinion. At the very least, a blatant situation where you need to review it.
Yes.
And then one where they did go to review. It's like, okay, they're going to go to review, but they're going to see it when it's slow motion. He grazed off. Like, that's not targeting. It's not the letter of the law. And they call it targeting.
And here's the other thing, just about, not just, I guess by the letter of the law, maybe they had to call that targeting because it's, the head, shoulders, neck area, and it's the crown of the helmet involved. Okay. Like, if you want to go there. Okay. But then the other part of this is you've got a quarterback. You've got a defensive back who is trying to make a tackle, and you've got a quarterback who is changing pad levels as he is running.
Right. He goes down like this.
Yes. As a defensive player, how are you supposed to adjust as the ball carrier is making that adjustment with his body?
If he goes down, if the ball, because he's not a quarterback anymore, he's a runner.
He's a runner. Right.
And so if he's running the ball and he goes down like this, that's not targeting anymore because now the ball carrier is leading with his helmet, I'm sorry. You can't at mid-tackle because Antonio Carter is coming in mid-tackle, and that's when the ball carrier, not the quarterback, the ball carrier drops his head at least 3 feet into the line of the tackler's helmet. You can't call that targeting.
It really wasn't even that hard of a hit. And again, if you compare the hits, the hit on Devyn Ford compared to the hit that Antonio Carter, because of the fact, I think, with the pad level and the fact that he hit his shoulder first, and it wasn't that hard of a hit. Like the hit on Devyn Ford, the guy clearly leads with his helmet. And again, it doesn't have to be the crown of the helmet for targeting to be called. If it's a helmet-to-helmet hit, that is still targeting. And he was using his helmet as a weapon in that case.
Yes.
The hit on Devyn Ford.
Absolutely. And it's on a kickoff. It was a kickoff where he's coming flying down the field
right
at 1,000 miles an hour. And that's why people want to get rid of the kickoff and
that's
all
what
of that stuff.
I was going to say. That people want to get rid of the kickoff
Right.
for this reason.
Yes.
And if you are not going to throw a flag or, again, even send it to the replay booth when you've got a guy who is down with a concussion, don't you as an officiating crew have to say, well, this guy is laying down on the field and they're looking at his head. Don't we at least need to take a look at this and make sure there wasn't something that took place? It's obvious that he took a hit to his head. You have to at least stop it and look at it and decide, how are you going to get this kind of hit out of football if you're not even going to take the time to send it to the replay booth when this is your rule? This is your rule, and you're not even willing to take a look at it. That was the most ridiculous case of a non-call that I've ever seen. The fact that they wouldn't even look at it for targeting.
And, at least look at it because he's laying there dying on the field. I'm being sarcastic to a degree, but he's laying there, prostrate on the ground, and you're like, nah, clean hit.
We don't need to look at this.
At least look at it to make his family feel better. You know what I mean? It's just terrible. Terrible.
I agree. James says Goolsby disagrees with this. I have no idea what Goolsby said.
Nobody cares what Goolsby said. He works for somebody else.
Yeah.
He works for a competitor. Don't bring his nonsense in here.
And again, I don't comment, on what guys from other outlets say or don't say. And I don't mean that as an insult. It's not like I'm disregarding what they say, but they're all entitled to their opinions. Mike Goolsby played, but I have no idea the context of what he's talking about. So I'm not going to comment on it. Indy Cheat Sheet says analysts contradict reasons for calls too. They'll say things like it wasn't targeting because he wasn't defenseless. Then same scenario say clearly targeting, even though he isn't defenseless. And that's the fact that, again, the fact that Jason Garrett is sitting there in the booth and they basically just glossed right by.
They really did.
Ford. They
really did.
They barely said anything. As the analyst, Jason Garrett, because he had to have a couple looks at it during the timeout. He could have said, this warrants having a look at.
Absolutely. They acted like it didn't even happen.
Right. They barely said anything, and again, I felt like if you've got a rules analyst, you should go to the rules analyst. Again, it doesn't have to be the crown of the helmet to be called targeting. If it's the crown of the helmet, it is automatically targeting. But it does not have to be the crown of the helmet. If there's a helmet-to-helmet hit, it's still targeting whether the crown is involved or not.
Correct.
And that's the when they whiff on safety things like this, Vince, that's what really hurts me. And you've got a guy who missed the rest of the game with a concussion, and because it's a concussion, you don't know how that's going to affect this week, let alone the rest of the season for him. I remember Brian Roberts, a baseball player with the Baltimore Orioles. This has been maybe 10 years back at this point, somewhere around there, but he slid headfirst into second base, what looked like, a fairly innocuous slide headfirst into second base. It affected the rest of his season. He had concussion symptoms the rest of the season on something that looked a heck of a lot more harmless than what we saw Devyn Ford take the other day, because you just don't know
Yeah,
when it comes to the gray matter inside your head, how it's going to be affected on a hit like this.
Yeah.
It bugs me.
It bugs me too, because all they do is preach safety, 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 and that's why they're shortening the game and they're doing all these different things. Well, then why are we not erring on the side of safety? That's my issue. And regardless of which way it would have gone, like if Notre Dame would have done that to a Tennessee State player, it still should have been reviewed. Like it's not because it happened to a Notre Dame player, it's because it happened to a player, and he's laying there. And it looked, I would not be surprised if he blacked out for a split second after he got hit because of the way the ball went flying out and the way his body hit the ground, right? It's player safety. And if player safety is truly a reason that they're doing things, that should have been reviewed, period.
Yeah. Facilitate says it affects you the rest of your life, being concussed. And that's, that's why they've made all these rules. And they're like, the reason that they went to this, like the fair catch on the kickoffs a few years back, again, is to minimize guys taking hits like this, to incentivize, make the fair catch, give you the ball at the 25-yard line. You don't have a hit like this. Again, they're trying to legislate kickoffs out of football, and you have hits like this.
Yeah.
And you can see why. So how about Steve Angeli? Move on a little bit.
Peanut butter and jelly.
That's right, baby. Little peanut butter and jelly. Here's Marcus Freeman on his number 2 quarterback, getting some live reps, getting to actually run the offense out there Saturday.
Yeah, I wanted Angeli to get some meaningful reps. I didn't want to put him in and mop up duty when the game's already. I said, I want a little bit of pressure on Angeli, but off the side. To say, okay, hey, we have to score. We have to be efficient on offense here. We can't go 3 and out. And so I thought they did a really good job of really going out there, having a plan for Angeli, being able to adapt for some of the mistakes that were happening on our offense. And I'm glad we protected him for the most part. We got hit once or twice, but I think we did a good job protecting him too.
Started the second half. And I don't know about you, Vince, but, the score, what was it, 35-3 at that point?
Yeah. Yep.
I was a little shocked to see Angeli come out that soon, right away in the second half, even though they had a 32-point lead.
The only reason I was shocked is because it was Notre Dame, and we just haven't seen it ever. I realize this is a new coaching regime and all of those things, and they never really had this kind of an opportunity last year, right? I mean, with Marcus Freeman as the head coach, so never really had a chance to see, what his position would be on this kind of thing. I was surprised in that regard, but it was 100% the right call, because for a couple of different reasons. Number one, for the reason that Marcus Freeman pointed out, he wanted to see Steve Angeli actually run the offense with the number ones, full out, right? I mean, run the offense, not just come in and hand off to a walk-on or whatever. Like, that doesn't do you any good, right? So I was happy from that angle. The other angle that I was happy about is, look, we have been singing the praises of Sam Hartman since he decided he was going to come to Notre Dame, and even more so since we've actually seen him play, right? The 12 possessions, 11 touchdowns, and a missed field goal, like all that stuff. If something happens to Sam Hartman, you can kiss this season goodbye if you're looking for, lofty goals for this team, okay? And if you can get him out of the game 100% healthy with a guaranteed victory, bye-bye, Sam Hartman. Throw on the backwards ball cap, throw on the ratty practice jersey, and start sending in signals, baby, because Notre Dame needs him to play in all 15, 14, whatever games that Notre Dame is going to play in this year. So I am totally fine with it.
And I thought that Angeli looked solid. There were some times he kind of maybe got mesmerized a couple times in the pocket, but let's remember, he's out there for a reason, seeing a real defense for a reason, to give him that opportunity to actually see a real defense and not those kind of late fourth quarter snaps like Kenny Minchie took. By the way, I was wrong about Minchie. I said he'd play at the end and he'd just hand off. He actually he's 2 for 2. He got through as well. But I thought it was much needed experience that Angeli gets. So now he gets to get in there, get in the film room, and have some actual film to take a look at. I mean, he's credited with a couple of touchdown passes, but hey, Japron Payne and Jadarian Price, nice doing the legwork for Steve Angeli, giving him like 82, I think, of those passing yards that he ended up with, the 130 passing yards that he ended up with.
Hey, yeah, I bet Sam Hartman will be the beneficiary of some long runs and some short passes and things like that. It's just, it's the way it works. You know what I mean? And you're gonna, we always talk about those 5 running backs and how deep they are. Well, one of those 5 has to play when Steve Angeli is in, and so they're gonna make him look pretty darn good.
Yeah, USMA 87 talking about the video of Hartman signaling the plays in. Did you see that where he's wearing the mock on the sideline?
I feel like he was just being silly, and you know what? He had a good day, so you can be as silly as you need to be.
Oh, we're going to this. Freeman needs to stop being so docile on the sideline. Doesn't bode. They won by a combined 98-6 in 2 games, and being docile is not good for the team. How about a calming demeanor on the sideline? Do you think that is good for the team?
Did they not show on NBC of Marcus Freeman screaming at the defense and dropping an F-bomb? Did you miss that one? Because it's all over social media.
Right.
And he was not docile in any way, shape, or form. And there's no reason to be fired up when you're winning by 50. Like, you're looking at the clock hoping somebody doesn't get hurt. Like that, there's no reason to be fired up, man. And if you think that Marcus Freeman is not going to be fired up on the sidelines in the big games, then you haven't been paying much attention, because last year, from the second half of the season on, you saw the real Marcus Freeman on the sidelines being plenty animated, and he will continue to be. So don't worry about it. But when you're up by that many points, man, it just looks fake. It looks fake.
So Marcus Freeman, end of the first half, Tennessee State's got the ball. They're like down there, red zone. There's a little bit more than 3 minutes left. Marcus has got, I believe, all 3 timeouts remaining at that point.
He may have.
Yeah.
He may have. I can look if you would like.
So how's he going to use those timeouts? Is he going to give himself some time for his offense at the end, assuming they get the ball back? There's decisions to be made. And when you're standing there on the sideline, you've got to make them in those 25, 30-second intervals. How are you going to deal with this? When are you going to use your timeouts? Here's Marcus Freeman talking about his decision-making process on whether or not to use his timeouts before the end of the first half.
I saw on the clock as we were going out there, I think it was between 2 and 3 minutes. I said, man, if we can get a stop here, I want to have a 2-minute drive, right? And I was really calculating when we were going to use those timeouts and the ability to hold them as long as we could. After first down, we use them. After first down, we use one. Second down, after second, we use 2 of them there. And I wanted to keep 1 timeout for our offense to have a 2-minute drive. And obviously, they didn't need it, but it's so crucial to have those type of really situations. We do them in practice, but to have it live, man, I was so proud of the way they executed. I love the communication. I was able to communicate with Coach Gold and say, hey, if they run the ball, we keep them bound using the timeout. Coach Parker, I'm going to save you 1 timeout. I don't want to use the timeout until a pass midfield. All those things, man, you can practice them all the time, but there's so much value using it. Yeah.
So they got the ball back with 53 seconds to go. They only needed 38 of it to go 6 plays, 6 completions by Sam Hartman. So what did you think of Marcus Freeman's explanation there?
It made a lot of sense, and he obviously knew his team better than I do, and that's important. Because I was like, why is he not calling timeouts earlier? And I was talking to you about it. I'm like, because I wanted them to get the ball back and have some time to do something. So our thought process was the same, but then, they ended up getting the first down, obviously. And so maybe they would have been out of timeouts by the time it got down, and maybe they wouldn't have gotten gotten the ball back, whatever. It turned out to work perfectly. Now, hindsight is 20/20, obviously, but he used the 2 timeouts, and then he had 1 left over for the offense to use if they needed it to go down the field. I mean, it worked out great. Obviously, they didn't need the 1 timeout, but I I was incredulous there for a little bit. I was not happy. I was like, you should be using those timeouts so you can get your team the ball.
Vince was grumpy old man, and
he proved me wrong.
I was devil's advocating, with Vince. If it's don't you have faith? I don't even know all the stuff you were saying, man.
Well, he proved me wrong because I didn't realize that Sam Hartman was going to take his team down the field, go 6 for 6 for 80 yards, a touchdown in 38 seconds. Like, I didn't see that coming, but now that I know that it exists,
well,
good job.
And the other thing that happens that we got to remember, because we're so used to the clock stopping all the time, and obviously it doesn't stop most of the time now on first downs, but under 2 minutes it does. So it's like, boom, 18-yard pass. You're going to get that stoppage. You don't have to worry about a timeout. Another 18-yard pass. Like, the only play that didn't gain double-digit yards, the only two plays were the first play and the last play. The short pass to Jabron Payne, and then, of course, the touchdown pass to Holden Stays. Otherwise, they were all explosive plays right downfield. And, hey, turns out that they've got some tight ends on this roster, after all. The Mitchell Evans, Holden Stays drive, for the most part.
It was. I tweeted out this is the tight end drive, because 4 out of the 6 passes went to tight ends, 3 of which went to Mitchell Evans, 1 to Holden Stays. And look, it was a fantastic drive. I mean, they found the holes. They marched right down the field. It was methodic. It was glorious. It was everything that you want a 2-minute drive to look like. It was almost too fast, for that matter. Like, they just went boop, 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 touchdown. It was great. Now, I also realize it is not going to be that easy against the competition that they're going to have in the future. Totally understand that. But it was awesome to see them at least work on the 2-minute drive in a real game situation.
And you can obviously criticize the level of competition they played. No one, like, I saw some Notre Dame fans kind of get a little upset. Why was Notre Dame not mentioned nationally this weekend? Well, they were playing an FCS school, but at the same time, these almost served as exhibition games for Notre Dame. They count. Navy counts more than Tennessee State because it's FBS versus FCS, but they kind of serve new quarterback, new offensive coordinator, new offensive line coach, and Marcus Freeman talked last week more about the communication and things like that. Jared Parker talked about the communication, but all these kind of new variables that have been added to the mix, it served a little bit like a couple of exhibition games.
Yeah.
And now it's like you know a lot more about your team. You know more strengths and weaknesses. Now your opponents are going to they've got some film to watch as well, but still, like, they almost serve as exhibition games. And now it's like you're warmed up and you're ready to jump in there against Power 5 competition now that's going to be coming up.
Well, and it's, we can glean a lot from practices and all of those things, but there's no substitute for game reps, right? And that's what we've all been able to see over the last 2 weeks. Now they're going to have I shouldn't say a real opponent, but a Power 5 opponent for the first time in the season on the road this week. Like, this is where the season starts. And I don't think anybody can argue with that. This is where the season starts right now, this Saturday with NC State. And we're going to see where this team is at, right? And I think we can all make some projections about what we think is going to happen and all of those types of things. And I think most of it would be accurate, but we wouldn't have those projections if this was week 1. If NC State was the first game of the season, we'd all be like, well, I don't know, where things are going to go. But man, I've got a lot of confidence in what this team can do in a lot of different areas. Still a couple of question marks here and there. But I also guarantee you they haven't even scratched the surface on what they want to show offensively and defensively. So NC State's going to be guessing as well coming into this game with Notre Dame.
Yep. Josh says, Colorado's been the talk of the weekend. Every sports page has an article about it. You were right about that, Josh, and we will talk about that in rapid fire.
Clicks. They know it's going to get them clicks, man. Just ask Barstool Sports.
Speaking of which, Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
I'm always ready for rapid fire. Let's
go,
baby.
Todd. All right, so Sam Hartman did a little cartwheel, somersault, whatever you want to call it, into the end zone on his touchdown. Here he was afterwards talking about that flip.
I've been doing that one for a while. It's kind of the gladiator that got ripped off today after sliding. It was kind of the man in the arena, are you not entertained type deal. It was a little me guy move, so I'm a little disappointed in it, but sometimes it just comes out. But no, I mean, it was not premeditated. It just kind of happened, and the flip wasn't definitely premeditated. Kind of happened. But, you got to get out there and move around a little bit, so it was fun.
Little gladiator, are you not entertained? Me guy move, said Sam Hartman. So Vince, were you entertained?
Oh, I was. Let's see. When he went up in the air, my heart stopped for a moment, as I'm sure the entire coaching staff at Notre Dame's heart stopped for a moment, like, and then he does a beautiful, like, he tucks his head like beautifully, hits the ground, pops right back up, and then does the one of these, and it was like, okay, he's okay.
Blows
We're
a
good.
kiss to the crowd. Yeah.
Kiss to the crowd. And he called it a me moment. You know what? You're entitled to a me moment there, Sam Hartman. I was okay with it. I was very entertained by everything that number 10 in navy blue did on Saturday.
It seemed like that flip was almost in slow motion. Like, and then I kind of lost my breath there for a second. It's like, oh my goodness, like, do you really want your guy doing somersault? But I mean, that he did have to go up and over that defender. It was once again yet another very well drawn up play, and the C's parted for him, and he was, and then the blow to the crowd and all that stuff. I don't know how excited Marcus Freeman was about seeing that afterwards, but at the same time, hey, he got to the end zone, did what he was supposed to do. But I would say I was a little bit concerned about seeing your quarterback, who has done so much against Tennessee State, make that kind of move. But it was very entertaining.
It was.
We'll have to say that.
It was, and I hope he's entertaining for the next 12 games. That would be my goal.
Absolutely. We saw our first field goal block of the season. Mr. Onye, Jason Onye, blocking the field goal there after the Devyn Ford kickoff return that we were talking about.
So before tonight, me and Riley were like, hey, let's blow up the scar. so ball snap, me and him, we get low, we get really low, go through the guard's chest, and then I just put my hand up, and luckily it hit, so thankful for that.
Let's blow up this guard is what he and Riley Mills were saying before that. Vince, what'd you think of the block?
They did exactly that, and it was a no-look block. I mean, he threw his hand up. He wasn't even looking, and I think it hit the back of his hand. But, hey, a block is a block, and if the crowd wasn't already fired up after the no call and all that stuff, they are fired up after that one, and Marcus Freeman was super fired up after they blocked that kick. So he was not docile on the sidelines in any way, shape, or form after that. It was a great block. It was great. It was awesome.
And I tell you what, from what we were talking about, the defense really, after that hit on Devyn Ford, the crowd is starting to get fired up, and it kind of going back to the gladiator a little bit. It was almost like an unleash hell kind of moment, the way the defense did things, and then just capping it all off by blocking a field goal. More success in the red zone by the defense, by the way. The defense already has more red zone stops in 2 games than they had all of last season. They had 2 red zone stops, field goals included, all of last season. They are now 2 for 5. They have given up 2 red zone scores in 5 trips. So already 3 red zone stops this year.
And the touchdown percentage is 0.
That's right.
That's pretty great.
Yep.
So, again, doesn't matter who the opponent is. When teams get that close and everything gets scrunched up, I mean, they were terrible at it last year.
They played Navy last year too. They played UNLV last year too. They played Boston College last year. They played plenty of bad teams last year too. Still only had 2 red zone stops.
And it is something that they worked on in the offseason, and it was very clear that they worked on it in the offseason.
Yep. And in fact, I just did a Marcus Freeman notebook where he talked about that today. So you can read some of that on the site, irishbreakdown.com. Few listener questions that we have here before we move to some of our other topics. Ian Johnson says, is it me or does Payne not look as good as we thought? Maybe I'm subconsciously comparing him to Love, Estime, and Price. What do you think, Vince?
I think he looks fine. I think he looks exactly like we thought he was going to look. I don't have any issue with Jabron Payne doing what he's been doing. I mean, I thought that he did a good job of getting low and kind of squirting out and getting some good tough yards when he got the ball. I thought he did a good job of not getting tackled there towards the goal line. He kind of squirted out and did the 3-legged drill there for a little bit, probably picked up an extra 5 yards. So no, I think he's doing just fine. He hasn't had the holes that some of these other guys have had either. So, well, ebbs and flows. I mean,
Estime just creates his own holes.
That is
the other
fair.
guys may have holes to run.
And Estime was always here. Remember, I mean, he's always been the number one, and then it's been kind of everybody else.
And that's really it's still Audric is clearly the number one and deserves to be the number one. I think number two, especially look how early Jeremiah Love got in the game the other day, and just the way the running back rotation has gone. To me, there's no clear-cut number two. It might say Jabron Payne on the depth chart right now, but to me, there's no clear-cut number two, and I don't think there necessarily has to be. The way they have used those guys, they've shown that they're willing to get them out there pretty early and often.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason that that Love got in there a little bit earlier is due to the injury to Devyn Ford. I think he
that's true. I didn't think about it that way.
Snatched up some of those snaps. You know what I mean? But as Brian leaned over to me in the press box and said, those other guys better watch out. 12 is coming. And so I think that, you're going to see Love get a lot more carries and a lot more opportunities. Not that the other guys aren't doing well, but you got to get 12 on the field, man. I mean, he's just special with the football.
Yeah. And Price has shown himself as a receiver, and we still haven't seen as much of him running the football. And I do kind of wonder, both offensively and defensively, because of the competition that they've played. Like, they showed some certain things on film in both games, but now the level of competition does go up. Like, what were they maybe not showing these first? There's some base stuff that's going to be the same no matter what on both sides, but what was Notre Dame maybe not showing that we're going to see more of this weekend?
Well, I mean, we talked about in the postgame show about the lack of deep shots. You know what I'm saying? And I think part of that was they didn't need to. I mean, yes, they're eventually it would be nice to see something along those lines. I think they could have taken some deep shots against Tennessee State. There was a lot of times where they were packing the box. We had one-on-one competition, and they had the opportunity. There's just no need. There was just no need to take deep shots, right? So I think that whole part of the playbook has yet to be explored, I guess is the best way to put it.
And there were other times when Hartman was looking deep and they weren't there. And that's something Jesse was talking about with that 4-2-5 look, was there are going to be times when some of those deep shots are harder to come by. And Tennessee State did have a decent secondary. Now, Notre Dame's receivers still should have been and were better than them, but you're absolutely right. I think that we're going to see more of that. Army 72 asking, do you expect Notre Dame to go up tempo against NC State?
At times, when it might call for it. I mean, they showed that they can do it if they want to do it. I mean, it's in their arsenal. I don't think that they're an up-tempo team automatically, but they have it in their arsenal. So I think there'll be times where they do it, and there'll be times, I mean, I hate to break it to everybody, but they did do some scan offense at times too in this game. And so it can be done a certain way so that it is very effective as opposed to doing it the entire game. So I think they'll speed it up. I think they'll slow it down. I think it just depends on the flow of the game.
And this is still a good point going back to stuff we talked about last week. James says no need, talking about the long pass when the shorts were wide openish.
Yeah.
Still take what they give you.
Absolutely.
If it's there, take it. And Notre Dame, both the receivers and especially the running backs, obviously, with what they did in terms of yards after catch. But they have shown that they can hurt you. And Sam Hartman has been very accurate, completing over 82% of his passes through 2 games. So if it's there, take it. And then eventually, if you keep making them pay with that short stuff, the long stuff will be there, because then they'll try to take that away. And then I think this is a receiving group that can really hurt you. Well, I think teams are really concerned about Notre Dame beating them long.
Yeah, no, I agree. And if they're just watching the film, they're going to pack the box. They're going to try to prevent some of the short stuff, the crossers, things of that nature. Go for it. See what happens.
Joe says he's worried a little bit about the interior offensive lineman. Didn't have a great game against Tennessee State. I thought that we would see a little bit more domination on both sides of the line of scrimmage that we didn't necessarily see. What'd you think, Vince?
I don't think the line at all had a great game against Tennessee State, like across the board. And I wouldn't just pin it on the interior line. I don't think Fisher had a great game. I think he missed some blocks that he shouldn't have missed. So I wouldn't say the interior. I would just say the line in general didn't have a great game. But again, we're saying this, about a team that had 557 yards of total offense, 221 rushing yards, and 336 passing yards. So again, this is something that we can nitpick, but I'm not worried about it.
Josh says he thought he saw a lot of calls where the quarterback goes to the sideline to get the play rather than go to the huddle. And
that was when the backups were in.
Yeah, and I meant to ask about this today, and it totally went. So I'm going to write that down. I'm going to try to bring it up Thursday to see what was up with that, if that was intentional or what was actually going on.
That was only with Angeli and Minchie. It was never with Sam Hartman, I don't believe. And so my guess is they were just trying to use the entire play clock. I mean, they wanted the time to tick. I mean, that
makes sense.
It's not like high school.
Expedience was not a big concern.
Right. So they're like, well, if we call them over to call the play, it's not going to go quite as fast, because it's really hard as an offense to like sit there and wait to call a play, or to snap the ball, especially if you're an offensive lineman. It's a lot easier to stand in the huddle, wait to get the call, get up there, that whole thing. So I think it was more of a time situation.
Tommy Guns wants to know, do we know what happened to the NC State guy the other night? You will have to be more specific than that. I know they had a safety who was injured in that game against UConn. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, Tommy. From what I understand, he's better. Whether or not he'll play against Notre Dame, I'm not sure. I think that there are a lot of good matchups for Notre Dame in this game. NC State's secondary will be better than either of the first two teams that they played, but I do think it's a little bit suspect based on what happened in the UConn game, and I think that from a running standpoint, this should be a team that Notre Dame should be able to run against as well. The quarterback is the biggest concern in this game to me, because even the receivers, just looking at the way the UConn get, speaking of take what they give you, and they average 9 yards per receiving play against UConn. That is not very downfield. And I think that with Notre Dame's secondary, that is a big match. Yeah. So Tommy says the guy who got carted off. And again, I think you're talking about their safety. And from what I understand, he's at least better. But again, his status as of right now, I don't think is completely known for the Notre Dame game.
I'm glad you knew, because I haven't watched a single second of NC State because we're still doing Upon Further Review tonight. So I have not turned the page. I have not turned the page to NC State just yet.
Fill in the blank. It's blank. Florida State dominated LSU 45-24 last night.
Oh, it was a thing of beauty. I mean, I was openly cheering, obviously, for Florida State. I'll be the first one to admit it. I was at a local establishment for dinner with my family, and it was right around kickoff. And so I had the bartender, turn the game so I could see it. And he's an IB watcher. And he's like, I'll change the game. And he turned the volume up and everything so I could hear what was going on. So that was much appreciated. So that was great. And I was cheering for Florida State while I was eating my dinner. And then, of course, came home for the second half and was doing the same. It was fantastic. The second half was just a thing of beauty, Sean. 31-0. I mean, you can't write a better script if you're a Brian Kelly hater.
Well, and I tell you what, for people, all this concern about the running clock after first downs, that first half took forever to play. It really was a long, not attractive first half. But to see LSU just fall apart like that, and then Brian Kelly coming out in the post-game show and he's got his quarterback, Jaden Daniels, sitting next to it, not post-game show, but the post-game press conference.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there talking about, we got to develop our guys better. And we're not as good as we thought we were. And the guy just kind of looks over at BK. His expression never really changed, but he's like, is he saying what I think that he's saying right now? But it is, yeah, I guess you can say he's honest, but to me, like you can say, okay, LSU could go on and run the table in the SEC. I guess they've got a fairly favorable schedule with the exception of Alabama, but I think it's like 4 times now, something like they got their butts handed to them by Texas A&M at the end of last year, and they just got it handed to them by Florida State last night. It didn't come down to the end like it did last year.
Last year was a nail biter. This one was a butt whooping. I
think they played above who they really were for a good deal of last year, and I think that you're seeing what Brian Kelly's actually got down there right now. And hey, year 2 regression by a Brian Kelly quarterback. Who would have thought? Huh?
I was just gonna say the same thing. It was, just change the uniform, change the venue, and I jumped into a post-game show for LSU, and I obviously did not comment. But there were a lot of Notre Dame fans commenting, and many that I recognize. Let's put it that way, as far as IB people. And I think there were more Notre Dame fans in there than anybody else. And it's funny to me the back and forth that Notre Dame and LSU fans have had over the last 18 months or so, and how it's going exactly how a lot of Notre Dame fans told LSU fans it was going to go. And we'll see what happens the rest of this year. Brian Kelly will beat the teams he's supposed to beat, just like he always does, because he's a good coach. He is a good coach, but he has yet to prove that he is a great coach. And that's what you need in the SEC, and that's what you need to win championships. And he hasn't proven that yet. I'm sorry. And so we're all just sitting back. Like, they all thought it was sour grapes. Everybody's mad that Brian Kelly left. Like, that's a very small percentage of people. Very small.
Yep. Yeah, they lost to Texas A&M. Of course, they lost to Georgia in the SEC championship game. They throttled Purdue in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, but now they get their stuff handed to them by Florida State. So they have lost 3 of their last 4 games going back to last year, and they have all been by at least 15 points. They lost 38-23 to Texas A&M, and of course, they lost in early October to Tennessee by almost 4 touchdowns as well. So again, I think we're just all shocked that a Brian Kelly team didn't show up against good competition.
The difference of Brian Kelly at LSU and Brian Kelly at Notre Dame, you know what the difference is going to be? Their rope is a lot shorter at LSU than it is at Notre Dame. They will not stand for games like that on a regular basis, right? The big games, the top 10 matchups. They won't stand for that down there in SEC country. He'll be out on his keister real quick if he can't turn something around down there, because 9 wins on a regular basis, 10 wins, that's not going to cut it, man. It's not going to cut it.
Yep. Josh saying red zone offense was terrible, and that is right. And remember, decided not to kick the field goal, going for it. Hey, the first thing that popped into my mind was get used to it. Remember that? Get used to it. Get used to it, LSU fans.
So, I hate to be that guy, but I really enjoyed that game. Like, way more so than I enjoyed Notre Dame's win over Tennessee State. That's for sure.
For sure.
And not close.
Well, at the other end of the spectrum, you've got a big honeymoon going on in Colorado right now for Deion Sanders. They of course beat TCU, team that went to the college football playoff last year, on Saturday. And here's some of Coach Prime's post game.
All right. What's up, boss? You believe that? You hold on. Oh no. Do you believe that? Huh? Oh, no. I read through that bull junk you wrote down. I read through that. I sifted through all that. Yeah. Oh, no. Come on. Do you believe? You don't believe? You just answered it. You don't believe. Next question.
That was Ed Werder, longtime Dallas area writer, ESPN guy that Deion, Coach Prime, as he likes to be called, that he was going back and forth with. So what do you think of old Coach Prime's response there, Vince?
Coach Prime, look, you can't take away the fact that they came to win that game, and I give him all the credit in the world for that. Some of the stuff he said in the press conference, though, was ridiculous. I'm sorry. Number one, the media is not supposed to be rooting for anybody or believing.
Right.
Like, that's not their job, Deion. Like, that you don't – do you really want a bunch of yes men around you?
There's a little bit too much rabbit ears for him.
Yeah,
absolutely. That he has, it seems
But
like.
Look, I will admit I am a Notre Dame
receipts. He's keeping his receipts, right?
I'm a Notre Dame fan. I will be the first one to admit it, right? I'm a Notre Dame fan, but I will also analyze the team in an honest manner, right? But it is not my job to be the mouthpiece for the head coach and to believe in everything that he's saying. That's not Ed Werder's job. It's not his job. His job is to cover the team objectively. And they won one game.
Now, I don't know what Ed Werder or anyone else was saying. And, again, like Ed Werder should be able to ask a question without being a true believer at Deion Sanders' postgame press. It's like, the Colorado media relations guy, there's like, after all that, they didn't even let Werder ask a question, apparently. They literally just went on to the next game.
That's not okay.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
You shouldn't have to be a media cheerleader to ask the head coach a question, especially after that. Shouldn't it be enough? You won the game. Maybe you can gloat a little bit or whatever you want. Deion's Deion. They did some amazing things, and that was a very entertaining game to watch. I watched the entire first half and then headed over to Notre Dame Stadium for our game after that. And the fact that TCU, let me just say this, not that I'll ever have a chance to ask Deion a question unless, Notre Dame and Colorado meet up at a bowl game somewhere. But as you know, I, at the very least, had my money on Colorado to cover the spread. They were a 20 and a half point underdog. I put my money down on Colorado to cover that spread a long time ago. So,
did you get that parlay? Did you get it all?
Well, Kansas, Texas is the other game I have it in a parlay. That's not until like late October. So I've got to wait a little bit for Kansas to cover against Texas.
Okay.
But
all right.
I believe Deion. I did my part. I believed enough to put my money on it. So that should mean something, right?
Look, he said a lot of crazy stuff in that, because I watched the entire press conference after the fact. And the whole, I didn't understand the whole, I believe his quote was something along the lines of, I'm a black man coaching a team of 75% black kids, and it makes you feel uncomfortable. Who's uncomfortable? That one made me wonder. I don't really understand. Is that not the exact situation that's happening at Notre Dame? Well, I don't think anybody's feeling uncomfortable about it.
Exactly. Look at every Power 5 roster in America. It's got to be 75% or higher African American. I don't think anyone cares about that.
It's a weird comment to make. Nobody feels uncomfortable.
Deion has been very outspoken. Like when I see that, it reminds me a little bit of the whole thing during the World Series with Tim McCarver and the bucket of water and all that stuff. It was like Deion obviously is about Deion, and he has no problems letting you know that he's about Deion. And that's he's creating conflict where there really doesn't need to be conflict. I think people really just sort of wanted to celebrate his win and the fact that he was able to pull off. Nobody knew what this Colorado team was going to be. The headline was, 51 transfers coming in, and there was so much roster turnover. Right. People didn't know what to expect because of that. And then, of course, his kid goes out, Shadur, throws for over 500 yards. Yeah, and then, you got Dylan Edwards and Hunter, the guy who the number one recruit in the country, playing both ways.
Yeah, Hunter.
Yeah, there were some – just a million great stories coming out of that. And the fact that they went on the road and beat a playoff team from a year ago. There were a lot of great things. I think a lot of people sort of wanted to be excited with him, but he kind of chose to, again, like shine the spotlight on himself. That's great. Do your thing, I guess. But it was just a very, very fitting, I guess, that after all this, that's how the Deion Sanders era begins at Colorado with a sparring match with the media.
And great, you're right. He could have taken that so many different directions, and really highlighted his kids. And he didn't do that. He didn't do that enough, in my opinion. Like, that's what you should be doing as a coach.
Yeah. Fill in the blank. It's blank that, including that win by Colorado, the Pac-12 is off to a 13-0 start this season. The first time the Pac-12 that every team in the Pac-12 has won its season opener since 1932, when, of course, it wasn't the Pac-12 yet.
You're right. It was probably the Pac-8, maybe, or the 4. I don't know. Look, it's awesome, and it'll never happen again because I don't think the Pac-12 is going to survive. But what a way to go out, because we've talked many, many times about how good we think the Pac-12 is going to be top to bottom. I think it's going to hurt them in the long run. Like, I don't know. I think they're going to kind of feast on each other a little bit. But obviously the Pac-12 is breaking up with USC and UCLA and Colorado and all these teams that are leaving. They're breaking up, right? And breaking up is hard to do, but at least they're going out 13-0 in their first week, man. So good for them.
Yeah, Ness. And this is the first time I remember Ness commenting in any of our shows, and that's great. If you haven't been here before, welcome. He asked, why are we talking about Deion or Colorado in our Notre Dame football channel? This is the rapid, like, if you haven't been here before, not trying to be a smart aleck about this, but if you haven't been here before, this is the rapid fire segment of IB Nation Sports Talk, and we talk about more than just Notre Dame in the rapid fire segment. We talk about a lot of things. We talk about college football. We talk about the NFL. We talk some baseball sometimes. So a lot of different things that come up in rapid fire.
I did respond with this. So that was me that was responding to this.
Okay.
I was like, it's a sports talk show. It's in the name. It's right there.
Right.
But so we're not giving you a hard time, buddy. We're just having some fun with you.
No problem.
We're just having some fun with you.
No problem. And again, like, I don't look at it as giving Deion publicity. I mean, Deion's going to be a problem for the college football world. He's got plenty of his own publicity. So we don't
in a good way. I mean, he's going to be a problem in a good way and in a bad way. And, good for them for winning. It's awesome. Like, that's great. But it's a long road, man. And their schedule doesn't get any easier. So let's see how things progress here.
Well, and as I said in my prediction, again, I thought TCU would still win, but I thought it would be a couple touchdowns, relatively close.
Sure.
And it went back and forth there. TCU still has a defensive problem. I mean, they scored some points, but they also lost a lot. They lost their three main guys to the NFL: quarterback, leading receiver, and leading rusher from a year ago to the NFL. So there's and TCU won a lot of close games to get to where they got last year as well. So I was never completely bought in on them to begin with, but hey, they had a great season last year. But obviously it's a new season and the Horned Frogs have got their own things to figure out. I'm still just amazed that Coach Prime, 105 degrees in Fort Worth, Texas, was wearing a hooded sweatshirt during that game.
Woo!
Come on,
man. That's brave. I mean, it was 85 at Notre Dame Stadium, and Marcus Freeman was wearing a pullover, but it looked a lot thinner than what Prime was wearing. But it also, like, Coach Freeman needs to have, like, his own logo, because, like, Prime had, like, his Prime logo over here, you know, a little self-promotion going on the hoodie. So maybe that's why he was wearing it. But I think Marcus Freeman needs his own logo. I think he needs something.
See, now, Ness, smart guy, getting in on the action. You can ask your questions here. He wants to know if the ACC added anything besides the Dallas-Fort Worth market. I mean, they got San Francisco, San Jose. There are a lot of TVs in that area with Cal and Stanford out there. I mean, they added those markets, and they got a few extra $1 million for each team in
Yeah.
TV money.
Which
It's going to be, I'll be curious to see. I don't think anyone's really thrilled about it, but I think the ACC figured it's better to add than potentially, stand pat and lose. And so they went out.
They got to add. They got to add.
Yeah.
And at least Cal and Stanford match, the academic profile that a lot of the ACC teams have. I mean, so that works. It obviously doesn't add to the geographic profile, but then again, which conference does anymore? So you had to add. The ACC can't stand pat. They couldn't let the Big 12 scoop those teams up, because then the ACC then becomes even less relevant, right? And so they had to do it. And I don't necessarily have a problem with it. We just means we get to see more Stanford.
Yeah. Like Ness says, Stanford and Cal are in the San Francisco Bay Area, but it's not a college sports market. Yes, Stanford women's basketball, usually very good. No offense. I don't know the ratings for them. And the ratings don't necessarily matter, because here's the biggest impact I think this has, just in terms of a revenue play, is you have the ACC network. So by being in Dallas-Fort Worth and by being in that San Francisco, San Jose, and I would assume Oakland gets thrown in there as well, all those cable systems now will add the ACC network, and you get, there's a fee that gets tacked on to everyone's cable bills. And so the ACC will see that revenue. Just like that's the biggest reason the Big Ten wanted Rutgers, is they get that New York TV market. Big Ten network is on out there, and so they get that piece to it. So whether or not people watch is largely irrelevant. It's just that they get easy revenue, because now all that gets tacked on to everyone's cable bill every month.
Which is why they got SMU, because it's the Dallas-Fort Worth market. And, that's money.
Yep. So Indiana, the Hoosiers, play Indiana State this Friday night. IU head coach Tom Allen had this to say. Quote, "I'll say it till I'm blue in the face, till somebody tells me to shut up, then I'll probably say it again. Friday night football is for high school football." End quote. Vince, you buy it or sell it?
Oh, that's a huge buy, baby. And you can tell that he used to be a high school football coach in Indiana, because he's 100% accurate. It's a huge buy for me. Friday night is about high school, and it's about high school for me. It was about and is about high school for you. Like, it's about high school, man. And a lot of these stations and publications and all of these different things, they cover the local high school sports, and then they cover the college sports the next day. It's not fair to the high school athletes, the local high school athletes, to have to try to split time with the colleges that are in their area if there's a game on Friday night. That's not fair to them, man, because they're going to lose every single time. If Notre Dame had a game on a Friday night, every area high school team would have no coverage whatsoever. And that's a travesty, because there's only 9 regular season high school games in Indiana, right? Friday nights is for high school football. I get that they had games on Thursday nights because like some action and stuff like that. I get it, and that's fine. But Friday nights need to be sacred. You cannot have games on Friday nights. That's messed up.
Completely agree. Like, even the NFL still has a rule that they won't play on Friday night, and it's because of this. Like, the whole Black Friday game was even that they're adding this year on Amazon was even kind of, not controversial, but it was debated a little bit just because of this, because of the fact that, hey, it's a Friday. And it's really amazing that the NFL has a rule against this, and colleges who are literally, just what you talk about. I think that there is kind of that broad interest because it's college, especially if it's a state school, because you have people who went to those schools. So you're right. They're going to be competing against these high schools for coverage on a Friday. The fact that colleges, and it's really the conferences, I think, who are making these decisions, but it stinks because colleges are recruiting these same guys, and at the same time, they're going up against them for this attention on Friday nights. I don't think that it is good for anyone that colleges have decided to do this on Fridays.
It's terrible. Yeah. Absolutely terrible.
You got to start another show here in a little bit, so I want to get through some of these we've got just a handful of super chats
Okay.
that are hanging out here
All
that I
right.
want to get to before we wrap up. So Nathan Milton, first of all, thank you. And he says, thanks for keeping it classy, IB. Best in the biz. Appreciate it.
Love that.
Mr. Milton. Tyler, what do you think of SMU not collecting TV revenue for 9 years?
I mean, they agreed to it. So I think that they didn't negotiate very well, but I don't know how much leverage they had in the negotiation. So I think they just wanted to be part of a Power 5 conference. And if this is what it took to do it, then that's what it took to do it. And they signed on the dotted line. So sorry.
They did want to be part of a Power 5 conference. They got their wish. And it also shows you, it's a private school, obviously, SMU, and it shows you how deep the boosters' pockets are, because there's still booster revenue that is going to be going into SMU that will more than keep them afloat. And at the same time, they will also be getting like cuts of the NCAA tournament revenue and stuff like that. And from what I understand, that revenue will still, because they'll be getting ACC revenue, that revenue should still at least match what they were getting from their old TV, conference affiliation and all that stuff. But I will be curious to see what this does for SMU. Do they become a major player again now that they're part of a Power 5 conference? They really want it in so much that you say, hey, we're not going to take the money for 9 years. And in 9 years, we're going to be about 2 years away from that
the re-upping
ACC grant of rights. Nathan says, honest question, do folks watch high school football games? Not that they watch them on TV, but some, because one, there's a rule that they can't televise them live anyway. You have video streams and stuff like that, but it's the local TV stations who are out there covering these high school games. And if there is, like, as you said, if there's a Notre Dame game out there to cover on a Friday, as opposed to high school, most of the attention is going to go to Notre Dame as opposed to the high schools with the coverage anyway.
I will say that I watch high school games on TV, but I don't watch them live. I watch them after the fact. So locally, we've got Channel 46. Was like Chuck Freeby and his gang. They do a game. I'll watch that when I get home because they stream it live on Facebook and YouTube. So I'll watch that. Elkhart does a live stream of their games, and so I'll go back and I'll watch that because they're a future opponent of my son's team. So I watch stuff on TV. I just don't watch it live because I'm at a game. Right. So yes and no, but the problem is most schools don't have that option in the first place. Down in like Fort Wayne, Indianapolis, like a lot of those games have live streaming video that you can watch. So I don't know how many people stay home and watch it. I'd rather be at the game, but I also don't want to have to make that decision.
Oh, and that's the thing too, is like, you're going to make people decide, unless you're a family member, you're going to make people decide, do I want to go to the college game or am I going to go to the high school game?
That's messed up because like for us, it's like, okay, well, do I choose my job or do I choose to go support, a high school football game? Like don't put that on me. Like, that's not fair. Of course I'm going to have to choose my job, and that's not cool.
Finally, Mark, thank you for the super chat. He says, I grew up in South Bend, West Side, went to South Bend, Washington when we won the state championship in football. Remember the 31 blueberries. Now,
I assume he's talking about State Road 31.
Oh, Highway 31. Okay.
I'm guessing.
Right.
Because we were talking about the Blueberry Festival, and I think this one came up around that time.
You're right.
So, yeah.
All right.
West Side Pride, baby.
There you go. One of the many schools Vince has worked at.
That's true.
In his high school career. That has made him older, meaner, and more bitter in his life.
You're not wrong. It's ingrained deep in my psyche now.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. Upon further review coming up at 8 o'clock Eastern time, that will be the live show. Vince and Brian will be there. So you be there as well. Ness, appreciate having you as a participant here tonight. We will see you
baby.
And everyone else in the near future. He missed a comma. No problem. Hit the like button on your way out. You can make up for the lack of a comma. Just hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe, rate, and review. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. Got an NC State reporter coming up on tomorrow's show.
Ooh.
So we'll
All
get
right.
that coming up. Ivy Nation Sports Talk.